Let's take a look at some of the sewing stitches that are built into the machine and some of the features in this section. This is the utility section here, the character and decorative stitches. We have these tabs down here for various sections of utility work. We have some heirloom stitches in this section, fully automatic one-step buttonholes, the usual Brother way. Sideways sewing, so if you need to sew in any direction you can do. And patchwork and quilting stitches in this section here. If we go into character and decorative stitches, tabs here for the various sections again, whether you want satin stitches or cross stitching or whatever. So if we go into this one here, there are a lot of pages of new stitch designs, things that you won't have seen in previous machines. Very elaborate, some of them quite large. And when we choose a stitch, let's move on to these candlewicking stitches on the next page or so here. Here's some candlewicking stitches. So if I choose that one there, you can see you've got a lovely big display there of what the stitch looks like, tells you which foot to use, various other functions around the screen. But if you add these sort of designs together, all you do is need to touch another design, you'll see that they start combining together to create another effect. So that's indicating it's going to do a single motif there. You could easily say, well, I want it to be a continuous design now like that, and you've got new designs. So you can combine designs as you would expect on a machine of this level. What I would like to show you is this new feature here that incorporates a laser guideline on the machine, and we're actually going to take a look as well at the dual feed foot that's attached to the machine while we're doing the stitching. Here's a great little feature that will enable you to sew perfectly straight lines by shining a laser light down the path of the stitching in front of the needle or to the side of the needle. And what I mean by that is, at the moment we've got a straight stitch selected in the left needle position. Let's say we want a straight stitch. We've got it in the centre of the foot there. If I switch this laser line on, it will shine a light, which I'll show you later, on the fabric, and you can align this light to be in line with your centre needle position, if you like, so which is 3.5 millimetres. If it's a 7mm swing on the machine, 3.5mm here will shine that laser light directly in the path of the sewing of your centre needle position. The nice thing is you can also use it for following the edge of your fabric. So let's say you're in a left needle position and you would like to be 1/4 of an inch in from the edge of the fabric. Then 1/4 of an inch is about 6.5 mil. So you can set it to either 6 if you want to be just inside, 6.5, 6.35 is a perfect 1/4 inch. So 6.5 is the nearest. And what will happen now, it will shine a light down the edge of your fabric, but the stitching line will be 1/4 of an inch in, or 6.5 millimetres in. It's also useful for when you want to try and stitch, let's say down a line here, and sometimes when you're stitching in the ditch, the line of the fabric can be difficult to actually see. So having this laser line shine down here is great for feeding your fabric, making sure your fabric is exactly in line with the needle before it gets to it. Here's our laser line shining down in front of the path of the needle. I'm going to set the needle in the left position, and I'm going to set my laser line for 6.5mm to the right of needle, which will give me roughly 1/4 of an inch in from the edge of the fabric. So that means all I need to do now is line up the edge of the fabric with that laser line, lower the presser foot, which at this moment in time has got the dual feed foot on here, which is a belt drive foot. And what that will do is really grip the top of the fabric and roll the fabric through at the same rate as the feed dogs underneath to give no slippage whatsoever between the different layers of fabrics that you're working with. If you do find that it does at some point, if you get two different types of fabric that are slipping even with this foot on, you can just go to the machine and adjust the foot to feed either a little bit more or a little bit less on the top fabric than the bottom fabric, and it will stitch absolutely perfectly. You can set it electronically to feed correctly. It's really easy to do, and it usually doesn't need adjusting. It's a very accurate foot. It's much better than a walking foot, and you can actually do forward and reverse stitches with it, not just forward stitches only as with a walking foot. So it's a very good foot. Basically, we're now going to stitch 1/4 inch in from the edge of the fabric, just by making sure that the edge of the fabric is perfectly in line using the laser guide. And if I stop that and cut the thread, raise the presser foot. Another useful feature, let's say that your stitch, you would like to stitch at a distance in from that line somewhere over here and keep a nice straight path equidistant to that line that you've already sewn. Well, you can actually set your laser line all the way over to the right as far as 15.5 millimeters. So that means if I now set that there, I can sew 15.5 millimeters to the left of that in a perfectly straight line. I would imagine that's very useful for a quilter. Okay. Another very useful feature is when you want to stitch in the ditch, and it's not easy to see the ditch that you want to stitch into. So sometimes the fabrics can be quite difficult to keep in line with the path of the needle. So all we need to do is set the needle into a center position, set the laser guideline for 3.5 mil, which is bang in line with the needle, and then just line it up with the ditch and keep that laser line on your fabrics. There we go. For perfect stitching in the ditch.